So I think to these points though that I'm hearing, so we have kind of this really high level state policy, master plan, which I'm familiar with, but then we have the student level, and I think that layer that you're talking about is the staff level, right? So being a staff person on a campus, if I can refer a student, not just to the Office of Financial Aid, but if I can refer a student to Elena, go talk to her, she can hook you up. That's going to make a difference in terms of building relationships. And so I think one of the things that we need, and I think COSO does a great job of this, but it's difficult to engage. It's difficult to engage because we talk a lot about the policy level, but if we can have a space for staff at the various campuses to say, if this is how you best support Latino students on a CU Boulder or on a DU, which is different than on a Metro or on a CCD campus.
Does something like that exist? Like you said something about Center for Multicultural Excellence, and then I know there's a Cesar Chavez Center at UNC, right? Like, and then there's like, each school seems to have like its own like little safe haven. Do those centers ever talk to each other?
Cross campus or within the school? So I know like at CU Boulder, we just started up again, it's called Adelante, and it's the faculty, it's Latino faculty and staff that come together. But I don't think that we necessarily talk to Metro. If Metro has a Latino faculty and staff organization. Or even, how do we build those networks within our own campuses? So some type of training for staff to best serve Latino students.
And from my seat, a lot of that comes down to, they may exist, and I think they probably exist everywhere, but they exist and perform more effectively with resources. And that a lot of times means money and commitment from leadership. And that's where a group like this can, if it's built into our policy statement and its focus area, we can make sure that there's pressure on the universities and the system to make sure that we put more resources into those support groups, those support operations, so that more students can access them and they can be more effective. Because it doesn't matter if they just exist, we have just a shell of a building if it's really too limited a resource to help enough students.
There's a building, there's no books in it, there's no computers.
I think another thing that hasn't been mentioned is the lack of representation in the subjects and the professors as well. Latinos, I mean, a lot of times we learn a lot of, what Latinos have done in certain industries or certain areas such as business or arts and humanities or whatever by taking specifically Spanish or specifically Latino classes. Because let's say someone who's in a business class is not, or a business major is not ever going to learn that. We're not ever going to be aware of how we can affect our community in whatever area we choose to be professional in. And I think that's very important to have about this.
To feedback on what he mentioned on support for those programs. When I went to Metro, I was part of Student Support Services, which I think was a TRIO program at the time. And although it wasn't for Latino students, as a matter of circumstance, most of the students who they helped were Latino students. And so they would kind of almost hold your hand. I don't mean that in a bad way, to say this is how you pick your classes. I didn't even know what a financial aid refund check was. I was like, how much? To buy books. I mean, a lot of those things you don't necessarily know. So if you're coming from a family who's not used to having everybody go to college, I mean, that type of extra support really is what made me stay in the program. And to the extent that there's funding to keep those TRIO programs alive, whether it's called TRIO or something else now, I mean, I can't say enough about how much that support was critical in keeping my attendance at school.
These programs, we produce a directory, which is on our website, of the Student Support Service programs. I think part of the problem unless you've been in a TRIO program or a Gear Up program or a CU pre-collegiate program, when you're in high school, you're not aware that they exist. So maybe a deliverable here is to make sure that our students and their parents and their advisors know that these, because we tell students, you go to college and then it's self-advocacy. And that's one of the reasons why they struggle. But yeah, we've got a dozen student support service programs around the state. bunch of the others of them, and maybe our deliverable here is to make sure that we're notifying students of the availability of these programs.
You guys?
Yeah. I want to move to like the current students as well, as you guys are thinking about college, like, now I'm going to put you on the spot, so hey. In terms of what are the things that you are worried about, are excited about, in terms of where you're at looking towards higher ed?
For me, I think if education would be a little bit more reasonable pricing, I think it'd be more easier for Latinos to be more interested in it, because if they make it seem like it's a type of privilege, then they're just going to be like, you know what, I just want to get my high school diploma, that's all. And yeah.
Did you guys know there was a booklet?
Well, for me, I think it's like lack of support when you get to college, because for me, I want to go out of state, so